We are honored and thrilled to have James Evans kicking off the 2021 online CAT conference. James is with Companion Care, a companion in animals for reform and equity called CARE. James will be addressing the importance of community in animal welfare. He will talk in detail about CARE's vision of care centers and how they will support community cats and cats in general, as well as the community that they live in. James will also talk about the pilot city of Atlanta and what is taking place in Georgia. James Evans is an award-winning creative strategist and leader with 25 plus years of experience developing relationships between organizations and their constituents. His expertise has been utilized across a diverse group of brands, both nonprofit and for-profit. James has played an integral part in animal welfare projects such as the Humane Society's Pets for Life, Adopters Welcome, Outdoor Cats Research, Stop Puppy Mills, Spayathon, as well as Best Friends Animal Society's Outreach Action Team, Maddie's Fund, and the Let's Fix This campaign from the SPCA of Texas. James is the founder and current CEO of CARE, a nonprofit that is using unique tools to help change the animal welfare field by addressing implicit bias, expanding research, and creating narratives to help save more lives. James sits on the board of directors for the National Animal Care and Control Association, NACA, and is a husband and father of 3 children. So James, I'd like to welcome you to the online CAT conference. And also after lunchtime today, James is going to actually be the lead moderator on a session about community cats and masculinity. So he is really almost co-hosting the event today. And so I'm just so thrilled. When we had our interview for the Community Cats podcast, he was just tremendous. It was a great interview, and I loved it, and I'm thrilled he's joining us today. So it's a treat and it's a pleasure. And I will turn the screen over to you at this point in time.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been an insanely tumultuous year, and like all the best ways, right? I, I really appreciate that resume. I feel old listening to that, but I've been in animal welfare for a number of years now, since 2008, when Maddie's Fund actually sponsored a spay-neuter campaign in Louisiana and Mississippi. It was incredible work, incredibly difficult work. We learned a lot. And I think more than anything, what we learned was, community really matters. And understanding the community for which you want to help or partner, we're really trying to get away from terminology that sounds like, serve, because it's so much more, I think, complex than that. We're not serving people really, and we're not serving their animals well if we fail to get to know them, or we fail to get to understand their genius and what they bring to the table. And so I think we learned that first in animal welfare in the Gulf of Mexico, that there was essentially a gap. There's animal welfare over here. There are people and pets over here and communities, and we want to help animals in a way that almost contradicts the connection between the other people on the other side of the leash. And so most of our work from the Gulf moving on, really, we were really trying to, I would say, add diverse voices into the mix. And at the end of 2019, it was almost like an angel from heaven visited us in the form of Chaitanya Merrill from Spring Point. Chaitanya is so smart and so insightful. And Chaitanya asked us if we would be willing to start an organization that was focused on bringing diversity and inclusion to the animal welfare field, because obviously we're in much need of it. And since then, we've been supported by Maddie's Fund and PetSmart Charities, and it's just been incredible. And so on one hand, we are really, really advocating that the field itself change and become more inclusive. Um, it's really important. I've always thought best friend's slogan, "Save them all," was, it's so simplistic and direct. But I like adding on to it that in order to save them all, we have to effectively reach all people. We cannot expect that we're going to help animals all over the country, and in fact all over the globe, if there are communities that we are not willing to visit, not willing to support, and community members that we're not willing to hire and invest in. And so, much of our work and time is spent on advocating at the highest levels within animal welfare leadership to ensure that people are seen, that people are seen as valuable. Um, all that said, um, we're asking the industry to make an enormous course correct, right? Right now, animal welfare is about 85% white women and 90% white women in leadership. And so to expect all of a sudden that we're going to change that dynamic um, is not realistic, right? Even in the best of efforts, we're all human beings. I think it takes time for people to adapt to and get comfortable with a new beginning. Excuse me. So to that end, we do believe things are changing. We are making incredible inroads with best friends. We're doing a lot of diversity training, and we don't even consider it training. We're really having incredible conversations about how we got here, what is the nature of our biases, what is the nature of our fear, and how do we use that and put that aside to benefit animals, companion animals in particular. So all of that work is being done. And and I don't mean to besmirch that work or say it's not important, because obviously it's incredibly important, but it's slow going work. There's a lot of people to connect with. There are a lot of conversations that need to be had. And so while that work is happening on that side, where we are advocating for talking to animal welfare advocates, we have started work on the other side. Um, and for us, that other side is directly in the community. And and to that end, we're calling this program, named it Care Centers. Um, and just so you know, care centers are not necessarily buildings. It's the center of thinking. It's the center of community. So some care centers might have a building. Some care centers may have just one person visiting households, and a combination. Some care centers will have vehicles centered around transportation. So the idea is it's to me it's to recognize proportional genius, right? And what I mean by proportional genius is that I think we too often believe that genius resides in our own small little animal welfare box. There's a danger in tribalism, and tribalism happens even when we're not aware of it. It doesn't happen on purpose. It can sneak up on us, and we turn around, and all of a sudden, everyone around us looks like us. Um, Not like me, but looks like most of you. Um, and it's not on purpose. It's not intentional. It's not per se by design. But what ends up happening in that small box is that we end up recognizing each other's genius and then forgetting that proportionately, there's genius everywhere. There is genius in Harlem. There is genius in Baltimore. We are not just a homicide capital. There are absolutely incredible beautiful people here. I'm related to some of them, and they're incredibly bright. They're incredibly gifted. They reside in Camden. They reside in Detroit. They reside all over the country and all over the world. Often, too often, we equate communities of color with criminality. We equate communities of color and impoverished and underserved communities with the lack of genius. And so inside of our bubble, when we think about how to solve problems, we think of those solving those problems first by us. We solve those problems in this little tiny bubble, and then we take that bubble and we take it to these other underserved communities, and we say, we're here to help you. We've already got the problem solved. We just want you to participate in this thing that we've already fixed for you. We haven't discussed it with you. We haven't asked you if you yourself happen to be an expert, subject matter expert. We just want to knock on your door, offer you this solution, and then if you don't want it, then we're aghast. Then we start saying things like, oh, they just don't care about their pets, or there's so much ignorance in these communities, and all these types of things. And the reality is that it was never collaborative. We never started at where the stress level begins. And so what we want to do and what we are doing with care centers, we're going directly into the community. We are looking for and have found quite easily, by the way, some of the most gifted animal welfare advocates that I've met in my career in animal welfare anyway. So we're focused right now in Atlanta as a pilot project, both actually Atlanta and Leech Lake, the Ojibwe tribal community. And so we have essentially a reservation care center model that we're working on. And we also have a very urban care center model that we're working on in Atlanta. So Atlanta, it just strikes me, and I have to shout out to Best Friends and Scott Giacopo for allowing his staff to volunteer for us, because essentially we all got together and we're trying to figure out where this first care center model would be. And Best Friends, Nick Walton, and also Mike Bricker really helped identify people that they met previously in Atlanta. Nick was an animal control officer working in Atlanta, and in doing so, Nick really got to know some of the people on the staff with him as animal control officers, but also got to know, apparently deeply know, some of the people. And so, when we selected Atlanta, it was based on the fact that we already had resources there, and Nick's sort of internal knowledge of some of the animal control expertise that lay in the community. So we went directly to the community members who had animal welfare experience, but you don't see these folks. You don't see them at conferences. We don't hear them speaking, but we will in the future. I guarantee you that. They are absolutely brilliant. We essentially partnered up and met with 4 individuals. Hopefully I don't get there, I don't miscount, but Tim, Bianca, Ebony, Dr. Ashley, all amazing people and all doing different things. Ebony is an African-American woman. She has been a vet tech for 15 years. She is unbelievably vivacious and smart. And what she recognized inside of the wellness center that she works at is that often people who can afford the service may not have a car. And this is endemic in underserved communities. People can afford their rent, they can afford to live, but that extra bill, a car note, may be too much for some. So if you have a pet, you're at home, you've got to transport that pet to some sort of local veterinary service. It becomes arduous because you certainly can't just hop on a bus with a 90-pound German Shepherd. And so Ebony recognized this, and she's very focused on solving that problem through transport. So what CARE is doing is helping Ebony get her 501c3 started, and her entire business model will be focused around transporting and ensuring that folks can get to the vet. And I just think it's going to be an incredible model. And so essentially, CARE is here. We have, again, thanks to Maddie's fund, thanks to PetSmart Charities, thanks to Springpoint, we are in a position where we can find people that have amazing skill sets and invest in them. It is really that simple. And they're people of color, and they're in urban communities. And we are not trying to start the next ASPCA or the next HSUS. This is not about size. It's not about making the biggest animal welfare organization humanly possible. Ebony is focused on her community, and we love that. And we would love to see thousands of care centers across the country doing what they can do to support their own community. So Dr. Ashley already has a medical practice. She is an African American vet. It is our intention to see and help create and support even more vets of color. But Dr. Ashley is amazing. She has a really unique full featured center, wellness center. And she is one of the bedrocks of the community. Everyone in the community knows she's there. People travel across town just to come to her office. She is an incredible person. And one of the things that Dr. Ashley has noticed is that there are a lot of children that come in that are passionate and interested in veterinary medicine. And so what CARE is doing is supporting her efforts to create a 501c3 that is focused on education and early childhood development around veterinary practice. So she wants to have essentially a summer program where she is walking kids through what her day is like as a vet, and even including surgery, but doing the surgery on stuffed animals. So she really, really gets it. Tim is an incredible behavioralist. He really, really understands the science behind dog behavior. He's won competitions with his bully breed dogs against police officers with their German Shepherds. So Tim is serious. He's self-taught. He is right in the community. Community members come to Tim all the time with all kinds of questions about animal behavior. And Tim's slogan is don't blame them, train them. And he really believes, and we do as well, that that's a micro and a macro situation. So often we blame people for the conditions for which we have put them in. We don't fund education the way we want. Then young people leave the school system not ready for work and not ready for college, and often turn to criminality. And we have failed to train them, but we're happy to blame them for their own situation. So Tim is a genius. He really understands the ligatures between dog behavior and people. And so he's determined to partner and support his community through behavioral training. So ultimately, this cluster of people all are looking to solve problems, companion animal related problems in their community and challenges their own way. CARE is not stepping in and saying, you know what, we need to make spay neuter a priority. We need to make trap and release a priority. For those of you, obviously this is a cat audience. We are supporting Sterling, Trap King, and it's amazing. He's in Atlanta too. So we have this like incredible, Sterling over here with cats, and Tim with dogs, Dr. Ashley with all animals, Ebony would transport dogs and cats, and I just it's inspiring, and and to be honest with you, it's based on faith. It's the faith we have in the genius of people everywhere, and that and the compassion as well. These all of these folks are incredible folks. All of them, as far as I'm concerned, can operate at any executive level inside of animal welfare. They probably won't ascend to that. They're just that's our problem in the field. Is that we're still so much of a echo chamber that their voices and their body language and the way they express themselves, they have themselves referred to it as ghetto. I don't think it's ghetto. I just think it is a unique cultural expression, just like Southern people have a unique cultural expression. And as soon as we are ready to stop judging people for cultural expressions and see them for their genius, this whole animal welfare field will change, and we can all sit down together and exchange ideas and our own humanity. Until that happens, and that's not going to happen overnight, we're focused on supporting people inside of their own unique communities. And how does this specifically help cats? I mean, I think it should be obvious. We have to stop visiting. We have to stop assuming that we don't have allies and partners on the other side. I love the title community cat. That idea that community is first and cats are second. But I think so often community cats is almost it sounds right, but so often we are coming to someone else's community and we're exercising how and when we are going to TNR, for instance, or rescue or whatever. And if the community is willing, by all means, what I would love to see is more grassroots community members who understand, particularly members of color and neighborhoods of color, that understand the urgency of rescue, that understand that cats are suffering, and many of these folks know they're suffering, they just don't know how to solve the problem. Regardless, there are some community members like Sterling who love cats, who want to help. And I think all we need to do really is elevate those voices in such a way that they can do more work. I mean, our support of Sterling is not to change Sterling. Sterling is perfect the way he is. We just want Sterling to be able to lay down more traps. We want Sterling to be able to drive to more communities. But Sterling is certainly not the only person of color that gets excited every morning to see his cats. He's certainly not the only person that is interested and understands trap and release, trap, neuter, and release, sorry. And so I think it's imperative that we do a better job finding people who are passionate about the same things that we're passionate about, that are not us, that are Latinos and other Spanish-speaking people and Jamaicans and Asians, and we live in this like incredibly diverse and rich community. I love being in spaces where, Washington, D.C. or Times Square, um, where you hear and feel to me, the real power of this country. Everyone's coming from different places, different cultures, different areas around the world, bringing all these unique skill sets, right? And too often, I think in animal welfare, we have created this bubble where only part of those skill sets are inside of the bubble. And, I think if we're really going to make a huge impact, and as you all know, because you live it every day, um, cats are suffering disproportionately to dogs. And to me, that means that the work that we have to do means that we need to find more partners, not more communities to serve, more partners within the communities that will help us with the work, because many of them, at least in my experience, are already doing their version of animal welfare. Um, and what we can do is lend technical support, lend data, lend experience to some of the folks that might be inexperienced but just as passionate. They are just as willing to put cat paws on their ankles and necks and wrists and is anyone else, right? But they just need support. And so that's essentially what we're doing with care centers. And just recently, Stanford Review wrote an article it was an incredible article about proximate leaders, is what Stanford calls them. And the whole study was just looking at how problems are solved. And the Stanford writers essentially came to the conclusion that people nearest the problem, people that are actually dealing with the challenges, whether it be roaming dogs or free roaming cats, unaltered cats, the people dealing with that every day are the people that are best capable of solving the problem. And so this idea that we have to continuously visit, I think is a concept that we need to really do away with. We should be supporting our own communities and assuming that there is genius enough everywhere else for folks to solve the problems themselves as well. And so it's really for me about faith, certainly a good dose of love and compassion, but mostly it's about faith. It's about really earnestly believing that um, all of the problems that need to be solved are going to happen with us, within the 85% of white women and animal welfare and the few people of color and the few Asians. We're not it. We are not the solution for all animals. It's just that's not going to happen. We have to figure out how to get more people involved. And so care centers, whether it be in Leech Lake or in Atlanta, we see that as the future. People owning their own small animal welfare organizations to some extent. There's a lot of workforce development there. If these organizations grow and they need volunteers or they need bookkeepers, those folks are very likely, just like everyone else, to use people in their own communities. And so we believe these small businesses, these non-for-profits, not only are capable of solving problems in their communities, but they will also spur their local economies. So we're really excited. We expect that a care center in Camden, New Jersey will not look like a care center in Leech Lake. It will not look like a care center in Baltimore City. Each care center and each care center operator will be solving problems that they are passionate about in their own community. This is not top down. This is bottom up support. And so we're super excited. I mean, literally, it's turned into quite a passion. We just actually, well, I can't tell you because it's a secret, but hopefully later this month we will tell you about some of the support we're giving to Ebony. She's probably not on this call, but I don't want to risk it. But I almost gave the surprise away. But at any rate, um, we're really working hard, trying to support people who are willing to support their own community. So with that, I'm going to check this box here to see if there are any questions.
If you have questions, you can start putting them in. I have my questions, and then I have other people's questions. So the one thing that it sounds like in this plan of you're sort of creating, helping empower folks to be able to invest and grow in their businesses. I mean, we all talk about nonprofits as not being business, but it is business really too.
Yes.
And is there a thought? I look at care sort of like as an incubator to help
Yes.
nurture and grow. Is there a thought of potentially sort of having like franchise ideas and maybe to help scale it out once these are all put together?
Do you want to get on the payroll, Stacy? No, I mean, literally. I mean, and I not even. I mean, it's 10 a.m. It has been less than 24 hours since we were on the phone with one of our primary funders talking about that exact thing. Some of these issues that we're trying to solve for are not unique to Atlanta. And it's hard for me. It's not that I didn't already know these folks were there. I come from a predominantly brown community. And people have the strangest assumptions about where I come from because of the news, because of the wire. I can tell you right now, if you wanted a chocolate cake and my family, you went to the uncles. You didn't go to the women. My uncles were all phenomenal chefs. And so and so many brilliant people. And so when you have this narrative hanging over your head or over your community about criminality, we forget that people are brilliant inside these communities. And Ebony is just brilliant. I think she has her model could easily be franchised. And so we just get so excited about the possibility and what it will look like when those folks are on these calls in mass, not one or two of us.
Right. You've been able to get some funding, and that I would assume would also be part of that process is helping others to be able to get funding for their own initiatives and have it sort of trickle down. And I know you were talking about bringing voices sort of up the chain of command or whatever in the animal welfare space, but I also feel like there's something nice in like small is beautiful in terms of how are we addressing the situation with community cats. We have tough conversations around whether it's one community cat, whether it's 10 community cats or a large colony of 100. We're having these conversations, but it's really targeted. It's really intense and focused conversations. And so maybe we want to have more of us rather than a handful of us sort of going up the list. Do you have any thoughts about like that grassroots, or when people say grassroots, they think of small, but it's not really small. It's just there's more of us out there doing the doing rather than having just a handful of us with, doling out dollars.
All I can say is thumbs up. I mean, seriously, but absolutely. I have, and this is not to critique animal welfare as a whole. And by the way, Tito's for dog people, and I really want to say that out loud again. Tito's for dog people are so excited by this concept that they have been helping us support Sterling Trap King Davis, which is not normally their thing. It's not that cats are not normally their bailiwick. But I think they are smart and understand the power of what you're saying, more people out doing the doing. There's so much work to be done, and often we talk about how care over the course of the year has gotten so much work done because we don't have a 10-layer executive team to check everything. We are doing the work, and by the way, we're letting other people do the work. So, if you're talking about rescue, you're talking about saving lives. If there are 10 people, like you're saying, that are willing to go out there and do the work, let's get those vans, let's get the traps, let's get the mackerel, put it in their hands, and let's get to work.
Right. No, I think that's great. A couple of questions around your project in Maryland. Can you explain what you're doing there?
In Maryland,
Yeah, you had
uh,
mentioned let me go back here. I was just looking in Maryland. There was something it said what does the care center look like in Maryland? Did you mention you had something in Maryland or
no, we don't. No, we don't have one in Baltimore, Maryland yet. I think I may have said that a care center here will look different than a care center in Camden, New
okay.
Jersey. The whole idea is that we really want community people, and to your point, small is beautiful. This we are the only species, by the way, that is determined to like try to lead millions. No other species does that. Everyone else stays in small controlled community clusters where your influence is going to have the most impact because you're only dealing with a few community members. And so that's what I love about care centers. It's not that we expect Ebony to affect all of Atlanta, but that zip code around that clinic, no one is going to need a ride to the clinic. Anyone that needs a ride to that clinic is going to get one. And if there's someone else in a neighboring zip code that also wants to build a support system around getting folks to the clinic, that is, I would love to see Atlanta with 15 to 20 care centers and think about what that would look like for animal welfare if each one of those care centers, 20 of them, had two people. That is 40 new people of color. Many of which would have their own 501c3s. And right now, we've only been able to count two organizations of color in all of animal welfare. And I just think we can certainly do better than that.
Yeah, definitely. You know, eh, and another part of the conversation too is, bringing diversity into your own organization and the challenges or, the concept of, is there a how? Is there a rule book on, how to become more diverse? We can all say, oh yes, here's our DEI policy or whatever. This is what we strive for. But, you know, how do we do either? Do we do intentional outreach? Do we wait for folks to come knocking at our door? I mean, what's the recommended process, or how do we overcome sort of this barrier that seems to be there that we didn't really know we created?
Yeah, I would say one, that's a great question, and two, we do all of that, right? I think it is it. I wish people would spend leaders a little less time in meetings and talking about diversity, and a lot more time doing diversity, right? It really is about leaving where you are, leaving that bubble. I actually met a dog trainer yesterday, has a blooming business, and he also does overnight stays. So he does dog training, and he said that he decided that he was going to leave his neighborhood, go to an African American neighborhood. He went to a YMCA and some other youth focused areas. And he said it was scary at first, and he was out of his element. He didn't know it at all what he was doing. And he met fabulous people, many of which asked him a lot of questions because a lot of the elders in the neighborhood wanted to make sure that he was treating these young men well. He got to know so many people that now his staff is 2/3 African American, and it was all white at one point, and another percentage Latino, and another percentage white. And it was so intentional. It was, I think, done without any kind of written plan, without a DEI committee. Our board, by the way, is, I think, 85% people of color. Many of them are in animal welfare and some of them are not. And so, often I'll give a talk for 90 minutes, talk about my career in animal welfare, and folks will go, where can I find someone of color to be on my board? I'm like, I was talking to you for like 90 minutes. It's just one of those things where I think we think it's more complicated than what it is. And I think some of that is predicated on fear of what the other person might be thinking if we just ask them to come and join us. And so it sounds easy to say, but I think we need to do less talking to one another and more talking to other people. And HBCUs, all of those places. I mean, if you're looking for young talent, HBCUs are a great place. Most people of color, by the way, know they're going to end up working for someone that is not a person of color. So it's not it's not like this strange concept that, when you're leaving college, that you would be solicited by an organization that's not Black run. And so, I just say we really have to just be intentional. We have to meet amongst ourselves a little bit less and go out there and be way more intentional.
What is an HBCU?
Oh, an HBCU, and it's really funny that you asked that because I see care centers is similar to HBCUs. HBCUs are historically Black colleges. Back in the 1900s, African Americans, obviously after emancipation, and most people don't get this, is that after emancipation is when the real hellfire came down. Once African Americans were not subservient slaves, and so we were essentially set free into the open community. That's when the Klan actually was created, not during slavery. There was no point in intimidating slaves. Right? It was designed to intimidate free people. And so all these doors of white America were closed, primarily education, because it was this fear that if slaves were to become educated, oh my God, what would they do? And so in response to that, some of the free slaves and educated slaves opened up and started HBCUs, historically Black colleges, to educate Black folks because there was literally nowhere else for people of color to go. And some of them still exist now. Some of the more famous ones are Howard, which is where our vice president is graduated from. So if you see Vice President Harris say something about HBCUs or Howard, that's what she's talking about. That's where she's from. And it just reminds me too of when I grew up in the 60s and into the 80s, people would say things like, oh, it's a Black thing, you won't understand, to other white people. I heard this as a teenager, and it really, I don't remember ever saying that myself, but I always thought that was a bit counterproductive, right? Because I need you to understand, right? I need you to understand my perspective if we're going to traverse into anything that looks like progress to me. So yeah, I appreciate the question.
With that being said, you're talking about understanding. I also think there's listening involved in there, and really, if we're working one-on-one with folks, or we're having a one-on-one conversation here with, 150, 200 of our best friends. And, but really important to do active listening. And I also think that that's something that we can all work on, that in understanding what challenges we have going on both sides. One resource that I always have thought of as a huge resource that's been under leveraged is all the people that we work with. So whether we're working with them with our community cats, whether they're adopting from us, whether we're banking with them or we're doing business with them, you can do banking with Black-owned banks. You can open up an account that way. All your applicants are potential board members. All, in addition to your volunteers are potential board members too, but anybody
Yeah.
who's adopted from you, anyone who's surrendered from you, anyone who you've done TNR for, they are all potential board members, in my
Yes.
opinion.
Yes, and
And
I agree 100%. And I think we have to do a lot better job of diversifying our boards, and not just with people of color, but also social economically challenged people. Poverty is not, and it cannot and should not be equated with lack of brilliance. Most of the Fortune 500 companies we know of today were started by people that were destitute and poor. And so, we tend to equate poverty with something that is worthless because we live in a capitalist society. But there are a lot of brilliant, brilliant poor people that would serve us all well, having them on our board. Um, Isabel Wilkerson's book, Cast, came out last year. It's amazing. I was lucky enough to interview her, and one of the things she says in the book is that we're all living in a house that none of us was responsible for building. But that does not mean that we're not responsible for fixing the things that we find broken. And often what I've noticed is that when we start this conversation about race, the first thing, particularly white men and also white women, but happens to me mostly with white men, it's this instant of, I didn't do that. And it's like, I didn't say you did that. I didn't say that I was a slave. I'm saying that slavery has given me a certain has left me a certain legacy, just like slavery has left you with a certain legacy of privilege. And we are living in this house together. And if the roof is leaking, um, somebody's got to fix it. And you know, people of color are for the most part still on a basement level. And so, there are things we just cannot fix alone that have to be fixed by white Americans because we did not invent racism. And so, you know, it's not to me about whose fault it was. It's about what can we do now to move the needle forward. Um, and we have to stop ignoring brilliance. I mean, it's something I think that thwarts the economy, it thwarts our life saving, because we think brilliance resides in this like little tiny bubble, and it's all around us if we just take a little bit of time to talk to people, really.
right. And I think that you can have a brilliant community as a whole working together to create, I mean, in my dream world, this humane community for cats, where if there's any cat that has a need, owned, unowned, feral, whatever, the community has the resources to be able to provide for those cats. And that's the community. It's on the community. Everybody who is
Yes.
there and involved and engaged is responsible for upholding to that level of support.
And you know what? We're getting there. I think, and the Atlanta Care Center model is going to be a model like that. That what's so great is that Sterling, Tim, Bianca, Dr. Ashley, and Ebony are maybe 20 minutes from each other. And we really see this being an incredible relationship because Dr. Ashley's got an enormous parking lot. I mean, she's got a great building, a great parking lot. I mean, if Sterling needs to drop his van off or sleep overnight somewhere or park his crate somewhere, that Dr. Ashley is going to be completely down for that. So it is, I think, what people don't understand is neighborhoods and communities of color have for centuries relied on each other that way. Because when you're being underserved by a local government or a federal government, you have no other choice except getting sugar, getting water, getting electricity. I mean, you go to some neighborhoods and there are extension cords going from one house to the other because they're sharing an electric bill. Is that ideal? No. Is it full of genius and love and compassion? Absolutely. Um, and so I think we don't realize that the survival skills that people of color have had to rely on are also a skill set that can be applied to animals, right? Can be applied to TNR, can be applied to loose dogs. And so if we invite folks into the conversation, people are like, oh, well, we used to do this to get by, and maybe this will apply to cat rescue or dog rescue. And so people that have had to survive a certain way, if I'm born with one arm, I've learned some things that you have not learned about serving myself. And if you invite me to the table, then I can teach you something that you don't know because you've never had to know. So, I mean, that is the beauty of diversity to me.
I'm going to go back to a little bit about we were touching upon boards, and I have become part of a networking group that has like executives and non professionals interested in serving on nonprofit boards. There's also the concept of being a board member, sort of the give or get, where there's like a financial requirement for you to provide to be able to be on the board. So just wanted to have your thoughts on that give or get, and is there an opportunity, or now that we're all Zoomifying and we're all go to webinaring and everything like that, we don't have those some of those actually those local restrictions too for communities. So someone could live in Orlando, Florida, but yet they grew up in Chelsea and Boston, and so they have a connection and they want to do something, and they could be on the board. So could there be this like network for board recruitment to help bring that conversation to the table, and that financial requirement, should that just get thrown out the window?
Well, those are great questions. And I mean, it's like you have a spy cam somewhere in here, but we talk about that all the time because our board is, because of Zoom and because the internet has flattened things out for everyone in the world. We have board members that don't have to travel to us. It's not like this one person on a conference call and everyone else is around this large conference room table. So we have brilliant brown people all over the country, including our very own Dr. Blackwell, who we miss and who is in Nashville. And so together we are moving care forward, and none of us, unfortunately, have been in the same room at the same time. And so, yes, that does absolutely, I think, give the opportunity for more intentional diversity. So if you are living in the middle of the country where people of color don't live, you certainly now have an opportunity to reach out to someone to be on your board via Zoom. And I think we also have to, in that conversation, talk about the needlessness of proportionality, right? I live in a white community, and so therefore, why do I need someone of color on my board? We're doing just fine, blah, blah, blah. I think that's just, to me, that's just silliness, because that would be like saying, why do I need a woman on my board if this is an organization for men and whatever? It is not the womanhood. It is not the blackhood. It's the personhood that you are bringing to your board. It's the lived experience you're bringing to the board, right? And so even if you're living in a predominantly white community, having someone of color, again, on your board is about bringing someone that may have had a different life experience than you, and therefore bringing different skill set and different survival skills. So I think we have to stop thinking about proportionality. and think more that, wow, there are people out there that have lived a completely different way than I have. And so we should have people with disabilities on our board. It doesn't mean that we are that's the board, that is the organization's mission, is to partner with and to help people with disabilities. We want people with disabilities on the board so they can teach us about what they've learned about surviving in this world that we all live in. And so, yes, Zoom and other things are really important and make that easier. In terms of the money aspect, we have not, nor will we ever ask our board to donate. We did not go out looking for wealthy people to be on the board. I think wealth is in this society is a far too, it's a crutch. Honestly, you ask an enormous amount of wealthy folks to be on your board. They all donate, but are you solving problems? I mean, and the problems that you are solving with their cash were those problems that could have been solved without money, right? And so, do we need funding? Absolutely. Would we turn away a board member's donation? Absolutely not. But we wanted our board members' lived experiences. We wanted their tenacity and their brilliance, their ability to challenge me, which they do, by the way. They are, most of them are of color, but don't you think for a second that they don't challenge me, because they do. I mean, that would be a misconception. Um, they're all coming with their own particularities. Many of them are not coming from underserved communities like myself. Many of these are very privileged people of color. And so we have a very rich dialogue about where care is going, because we're all coming from different places. Some are artists, some are accountants, some are attorneys. And, you know, I want their intellect first. And I feel like so much of what we are trying to solve for is an intangible that can't be bought. Um, Adding diversity and inclusion to the workplace is not something that you can buy. Um, Scholarships for Black veterinary students, which we just launched, that requires cash. But you know, there are 300,000 people in animal welfare, many of which have made Black Lives Matter statements, affirmative ones, have supported the idea of diversity and say, you know, what can I do? Give to us to give to African American vets. 300,000 people giving $100 a piece. Think about how many vets we can get through schools. It doesn't require one single wealthy board member to do that. We can send these kids through school. So I think money is important, but it is not the end all be all, especially not with what we're doing. I think if what you're doing requires an enormous amount of money, then yes, of course, you should have some board members that can help you leverage, but you really want mindsets, you really want spirits on the board.
Excellent. Thank you for handling that difficult topic, but I think it's really important. And we had an interesting comment in there too, that there are some foundations that require that you check off that all board members are donating financially to the nonprofit.
Yes.
So that may not be a question that we want to have on those applications all the time, or it may not be as critically
we know those exist, and I just think it is again. We just did a finished our Harvard survey, and some of the folks here probably participated, and thank you if you did. But Project Implicit survey, surveying bias in the animal welfare field, which is really a subsample of bias in the country. And it wouldn't surprise you that white people prefer white people. White people tolerate Hispanic people, and we do not like people of color in our bias test. But at the bottom, below all of that, is social economics. We do not like poor people, and so it's this constant concept that if you don't have money, you haven't been smart enough to gravitate to the top echelon. And those that are wealthy are certainly smart. They are certainly people of character, which is how we ended up with 45. Right? It's this concept. He's a billionaire. There's no way he's not going to get everything right. And we keep making this mistake, associating wealth with competence. And we're going to keep doing that to our peril. Many of the problems we need to solve as a society have little to do with money and more to do with finding our own compassionate voices. And that's my opinion anyway.
Excellent. Some folks in the chat have asked, like, is there a way to connect individually with the folks that you mentioned earlier? Like Tim and Ashley. Are those businesses live and people can utilize them now?
So they're very close to live. They're all in different stages. What Tim wants to do is really complex and beautiful. I mean, he really has got he really wants to support every aspect of his community. Whereas Dr. Ashley, she will be up and running before the summer, and we'll definitely put her information on the website. If you go to our website now and go to care centers, you'll see her there pictured in the video, and we're going to keep updating the website for that exact reason. She's probably a couple of months away from being donated to and supported, and Ebony is probably less than 8 weeks away from getting her truck on the road, her van on the road. So we're just going to keep updating the website, and I think we'll put in the chat, but we have a newsletter now, and we'll just keep everybody up to date with the newsletter. But we'll have some videos out soon too. I mean, these people are just, I don't know, they just make me warm and fuzzy. I mean, they're just awesome, awesome people, and I cannot wait until they're on, expo stages, introducing themselves, and we're all together.
That's great. Excellent. James, I want to thank you so much. There's quite a few other questions out there, but we'll make sure we get that information to you and Jen.